Session 300, Chapter 2, Verse 273. To the poor who are held back in the way of God, unable to move about in the land. The uninformed presume them rich because of their dignified discretion. You will recognize them by their characteristics. They do not ask from people insistently. Whatever good you give away, Allah knows it. Chapter 2, Verse 273. Perhaps the first question that comes to mind after you listen to the verse is, what is to in the phrase to the poor referring to? The verse starts with a preposition to, seemingly unrelated to anything else. We answer that to is referring to charity. To whom should you give? To the poor who are held back in the way of God, unable to move about in the land. When you hear the phrase held back, you may wonder, what is holding them back? We answer that a person can be held back by circumstances from within or from without. For example, if you wanted to travel, but on the day of travel you fell ill, then you were held back by your illness, a personal issue. If, on the other hand, you were able to travel, but the border agent prevented you from leaving the country, then you were held back by an external issue. Similarly, those who were held back in the way of God, unable to move about in the land, could have been held back by personal or external matters. On a personal level, a person who is dedicated to serving God may decide to stay in an area where he or she cannot make a good living. He or she may forego a good job opportunity in exchange for helping the community grow and fight for their rights. On an external level, a person who is dedicated to serving God may be oppressed by corrupt authorities benefiting from robbing others of their rights. We are all required to move about in the land to earn a living. To be a productive human being requires constant work. Farming the land requires movement. Manufacturing requires movement. And raising a family requires movement. God says, "It is He who made the earth subservient to you that you may travel all around it and eat from His provisions, and to Him will be your resurrection." Chapter 67, verse 15. If you are restricted in your movement, then you are limited in earning a living. God described those who have been harmed on His path with the phrase, "The uninformed presume them rich because of their dignified discretion." In other words, despite their need, they do not ask others for help. Yet the very next sentence says, you will recognize them by their characteristics. So if you pay attention, you would notice small signs in their appearance, clothes, and possessions indicating that they are in need and can use some help. God says, "The uninformed presume them rich because of their dignified discretion." You will recognize them by their characteristics. They do not ask from people insistently. The question that comes to mind here is, which is it? Are they discreet and do not ask others for help? Or do they not ask from people insistently? If they asked for help, even discreetly, then you would know them not by their characteristics, but by their asking for help. On the other hand, if they did not ask, then why the phrase, "They do not ask from people insistently"? We answer that there are two types of people here. The first type is the general poor, who God allows to ask for help, but discourages them from insisting or nagging others. The second type relates to the poor who are held back in the way of God, unable to move about in the land. This type has dedicated themselves to the straight path, and they do not ask anyone for help. They are recognized by their condition. This puts the social burden on wealthy believers. How, you may ask? We answered that it is essential for the believer to be socially astute and pay close attention to his or her community. Allah wants you to be aware of those around you, your relatives, neighbors, and friends. Pay attention to their circumstances and be ready to help when you see signs of trouble. Here a story comes to mind. A neighbor in need knocked on the door of a righteous man and asked him for help. The righteous man rushed inside, grabbed some money and gave it to him. After the neighbor left, the man's wife saw him crying. She asked, "What happened?" He replied, "My neighbor came to me in need." She said, "And you rushed to his aid, so what's wrong?" He answered, "I was so ignorant of his condition that he had to knock on my door and ask." This righteous man felt the burden of guilt because he was not proactive in noticing which of his neighbors and friends needed help. One of the great benefits of the Friday congregation prayers is the chance to see your neighbors, friends, and co-workers. Take advantage of this weekly opportunity to socialize and pay attention to who is there and who is absent. You may notice someone who can use your help.
The prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Convey my teachings to the people, even if it is only a single verse." Please take a moment to subscribe and to share with your family and friends. Visit us at www.QURANGARDEN.com.